Well, Erin, thanks so much for joining me again today on the Minimalist Moms podcast.
Thank you for having me, Dan. I'm so excited to be back.
I know I'll be sure to link that last episode that we did. I think it was a couple of years ago. So I'll be sure to link that in the show notes. But I'm excited to get to talk to you today about your new book. It's called The Opt Out Family: How to Give Your Kids What Technology Can't. So you're here to talk about that new book today. But before we get there, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. I am Erin Loechner. I have three kids, ages, let's see, it's birthday time. They'll be 12, 8, and 4. And we live in the Midwest. We're in the process of relocating out west. So we're sort of back and forth right now, opting out, if you will. And yeah, we're just living life. We homeschool, we do a lot of things together. Very much love your topic. We're very aligned in the minimalist area, which had a lot to do with my first book. And this one is just really, it's funny. It's like that book was kind of opting out of the American dream rat race. This one is opting out of the whole new rat race that technology has kind of paved the way for us. So I feel like there's just, the onions peeling the layer that we kind of do as mothers. And so that's really where our head and our family is headed right now.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm kind of going to dive in with this question because I was going to say, when I originally started following your work, it was back when you had written Chasing Slow, and I was following you on social media, and I just loved your writing. Your writing really spoke to me. I'm an English major. I aspire to write as well as you do. So it was just something that really spoke to me, and I enjoyed it. However, I've noticed you've made your own kind of transition and you're not really on social media anymore. So, can you tell me a little bit more about what made you take that step back?
Yeah, of course. It really started with the birth of my daughter. So this was 12 years ago. I've been online for 20 years, lived a very
Yeah.
public life. We had kind of before influencing was a thing, we were hgtv.com influencers and hosts there over there. So it was just we really did live, my husband and I, publicly for the most part. And I really recognized early on when my daughter was just an infant that if I continue this route, I mean, it really skyrocketed. Things went faster than what we were ready for. And I knew I would be parenting more with the phone in my hand than not if I were to continue this direction. It was not something that I felt like I could moderate or balance. I feel like I really tiptoed in that area for a long time of maybe this is something that we just live with that we have to kind of balance. And I think like we do all things, we just sometimes we just decide I don't want to balance this. I don't want this to be an influence in my life. I don't want to be influencing other people in this way. And so I just sort of checked out. I stopped logging in. I never went back. It wasn't as intentional as I thought it could be. It was just I kept not going back and I realized I like life so much better without knowing all of this stuff about other people that I'll never meet or that I have no context for. And so yeah, I just sort of stepped away. And the beauty of that was I knew that my husband worked for Apple as well, so we're very familiar with the algorithm, and we knew from the get-go, we didn't want our kids' faces online, we didn't want their names online, we didn't want that. We didn't want to sort of shape their existence in this environment, and our hope was that they would choose that as well. But it became very clear that we would need to figure out a way for them to exist offline, if that were the case, because everything is headed in that direction. And so we thought, well, I'm going to go first. We're going to go first. And if anybody can do it, coming from someone who has a million followers, this is my work, this is my livelihood. If I can do it, then my kids can do it. And so I just thought, I'm going to go first. I'm going to set out to see if it's possible. And that's a lot what this book is about. It is possible and it is fantastic on the other side. So that was really a bit of the journey into the writing of that book.
Yes, I think I hear that and it sounds I somewhat yearn for that, but then there's this hesitation to say, but wait, I'm existing in the space. Like you can have a podcast exist without social media. I do think that that's true. But if you want to see growth, typically you would just assume I need to be active here. So I think for you to take such a leap of faith, I guess I should just say for me personally, it seems like a lot of my identity is rooted in this online persona and or the need to participate in this, and I'm just wondering how you let go. I mean, you really let go.
Mm. I think I was. a little guarded from the get. It was very accidental, my online existence, and so it wasn't really an intention. I think it would be harder for people to process. I worked so hard for this thing, and not that I didn't work hard, you do. It's all encompassing, this kind of life, and I know so many people are grateful for the people that can balance the platforms and can sort of share their knowledge with other people in a way that does make sense for their life. And because we homeschool, because my kids are around all the time, it just didn't make sense for me to do both of those things. So, yes, I would say that um, I know a lot of people who could probably exist without social media, but it is a leap. It's a leap of faith. You can never really measure the missed opportunities. You don't know what has been lost. And so I think I'm very grateful that I don't know what has been lost. This was an easier transition than I thought it would be simply because I don't think I placed a lot of value on online connection in the first place. I'm a big believer in offline community. I think we can create online communities, but they're never going to replicate the real thing. The real thing is so much better. I've always said if I can't bring a casserole to you when something bad happens, we're not actually friends. We're not really, we don't have the context for each other's lives. And so being a person that places high value on that, it wasn't as hard to step away as I thought that it would be.
Absolutely. So let's get into this book. Again, it's called The Opt Out Family: How to Give Your Kids What Technology Can't. There seems to be a global tech free movement happening. I know that you're talking about it. Jonathan Haidt has recently released a book called Anxious Generation that I think is very complimentary of your book. So, why else do you feel like this is the time is now to release such a book?
I think we're all so tired. I really do. And you know what's so funny, Diane, is when I wrote this book, it was not, I thought it was going to be a lot bolder of a statement to say like, hey, just walk away, don't do it, don't engage, don't worry about the balancing of the tiptoed. Like, um, I was a little nervous about how that would be received. And I think we just hit this shift post COVID where everybody is so tired of living online and engaging in these platforms that they have no control over, that are manipulating them, that we know are manipulating us. And I think we have sort of collectively agreed that something has to change in a big way. But until it can change in a big way, we have to step up in our families and we have to try to figure this out on the home front. I wish that weren't the case. I wish that systemically we could change and that, you know, I think there are wonderful people fighting on the front lines of that. And I know very many, and Jonathan Hay has been very, oh, he's a fantastic resource for this. Any of his work is headed in absolutely that direction. And um, yeah, I think we are sensing this shift. And I certainly know from talking to so many people that I interviewed over 250 sources for this book. And many of them were teens, and I think we had this perception that teens were going to be very hard to kind of coax away from the phone or encourage elsewhere, that there is a whole life outside of these phones. And oh gosh, universally, they were as tired as we were. They thought, I hate this life. I hate this livelihood. We are so unhappy. No one's talking about it. And we don't know. All our parents say is get off the phone, but there's really nothing to do otherwise. This is our life. This is the life we've given them. And so I really wrote this book for those children that I think are yearning for something different and want a deeper experience. But we kind of took it away. We didn't ever give them the opportunity to have that in the first place.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, a few different paths. I'll take this one though. I'm curious to know about your personal experience. How old did you say your oldest is?
She's 12 now.
Okay, so is she I know my daughter, she's 9. She's like, "When can I get a phone?" And I'm like, "That's not even a conversation to be had at this point." Like, I just wouldn't ask that question. But I'm curious to know, have you found that your daughter is less likely to ask those questions because she's not seeing you on it? That seems to probably help.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. And to be honest, we knew this very early on, and so we took all our kids out and about once, and when they were very very young, and we just talked about like, what do you guys see? What do you guys? We were out to this like promenade park, and there were dinners happening, and everybody was kind of engaged in their devices, like we see when we go out in public now. And we just asked them like, what do you guys see? What are you guys witnessing? And my daughter, gosh, she was 5 maybe at the time, and she said everybody's on a phone, and they knew it wasn't, they knew there was something wrong here. They knew that there was something missing and it was connection. And they knew they just I think that kids inherently know that something's a little off. And
Yeah.
so from the get-go, we really would have those conversations. If we would see people at dinner where, the parents were on their phone and the kids weren't, my kids would often make a comment, and I always say it wasn't to create kind of critical toddlers, but it was to create critical thinkers. We wanted our kids to recognize and observe and see, yes, technology might be the future, but is this the future that we want? And for them, it was really a hard no. So I would say, yeah, she is now at the point where she's involved in a local theater group, and
Okay.
everyone else has phones. And so she came home one night and we had a really, really beautiful conversation, and it was really hard. And we just said, we get how hard this is. This is not fair to you. This is not fair to them. Um, this is not the sort of existence that we want you to have as a child. And you deserve better. And we're sorry for that. And um, we just asked her sort of like what thoughts are in her head, and she said, "You know what, guys? I don't even want a phone. I want a friend that doesn't have a phone. I want a friend that's present with me, that looks me in the eye, that we have common interests that aren't videos that they're watching on TikTok." And she wants that, and so do other kids. And so the idea is, if we can really rally and shape this generation while they're young, if we can catch them before we have sort of thrown them on the treadmill, that would really be ideal, and it would really make waves for them.
Absolutely. One of my friends that I'm in a homeschool group with, she has just sent one of her kiddos back to middle school, 8th grade. And I was asking her just yesterday, I was like, how is he feeling about all of this? She said some mixed feelings, but she said, I think it's just so hard to find connection because during classroom time, no, the phones have to be put away. But she said during those um the transitional times, people are just on their phone. They're checking their messages, they're checking their social media. And then during lunch, I guess he said that it's super quiet. People are just on their phones looking at it's insane the things that they're looking at there at school. So, all that to say, I want to talk about the algorithm because that's something that you use in your writing this book. But the algorithm has just sucked us in so much for that little hit of dopamine that it's like, oh, yeah, when we're in these transitional periods, we're not checking in with our friend that's at the desk next to us. We're just addicted. It truly is an addiction. So I want to know a little bit more. You said that your husband and you are familiar with the algorithm. What are some of the realities about that you found alarming?
Ah, gosh. Well, the alarming, overwhelming message is just that we're not in control of it. It's not all bad, otherwise, we wouldn't use it, right? But I can't think of any parent that I know that would say, "Hey, do you want to get on this path?" And you don't know where it leads. You don't,
Mm,
it could go anywhere. And you truly don't know. And we all know the statistics about, how quickly our children are served up disturbing content. It takes less than 3 minutes on TikTok. It takes less than 4 minutes on Instagram for any user to follow a path that has been predetermined based on what the hits and what our engagement level is the most likely to react to, which we know now are anger and fear. And so, and we're not immune as parents, right? This is anyone that's engaging with these platforms.
mhm,
The idea is just that with growing brains, actually, I would argue without growing brains, it's really not healthy for any of us to engage with,
mhm.
because we are popping into a swimming pool and we have no idea where we just don't, it's like a lazy river and we just don't know
Yeah.
where it's headed next.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sound fun to me, and it doesn't sound fun to me for my kids. So, um, yeah, it's alarming how, and all the stats are in the book. They're all in there. But the reason that I am so fascinated by the algorithm is because there are things. It's a recipe, right? It's do this and this and this and get this result. And it's very logical and it's very predictable. And if you're the one in control of it. And so I thought, well, what if we as parents can kind of tap into that same mentality? What if we can create this experience that is like a long term recipe where we can know where the path leads and we can use it in our favor and we can kind of fight the tech bros with their own plan, right? And
Mhm.
so that's what this book is. It is simply, it's not what not to do, it is what to do. It is, I wouldn't even say it's a formula, but it definitely takes all of those engagement tactics and all those strategies that big tech uses to keep us on our phone And it
Mhm.
teaches parents how to use those same strategies that are super effective, how to use them off the phone and offline to really create a family culture that you're not going to want to escape from.
Yes, I love that. So you're using these basic principles of the algorithm to encourage that deeper connection in the household. And I love that you suggest that when families opt out of technology, they need to opt into something better. So just kind of, it's kind of like, I mean, any habit change, you need to replace it with a different habit. It's very hard to stop a bad habit. It's usually better to replace it with something that you would
Mhm.
like to do better. So what does that look like in a family? Maybe provide an example of what you mean by that.
Sure, yeah. One of the examples that we use is um, let's see, TikTok. Okay, so TikTok, for example, they removed all starting cues. So there aren't any, when you pop into the app, it's already happening. There's already videos that greet you, there's already a dance, there's already recipe. There's no friction there. You don't have to press the button that says log in or it's just there it is. You're met with whatever is happening in the feed. Whatever it is determining that they want to see. And so I thought, okay, well, what are some ways parents can remove stopping cues to keep our kids feeling creative and keep our kids sort of in that zone of flow? And 9 times out of 10, parents are the ones introducing the friction of the creative project, right? Like maybe our kids are they're going to run outside the door and we're saying, don't forget your coat or shut the door or all those little, reminders that we send them before when they're headed out to do something. Not that those things are bad, but they do it's a starting cue. It's or when we say like our kids are walking around the house and we're thinking they're bored or whatever, and we say like, "How about this? What if you do this? And what if and there's this happening and we're saying all these things, giving them all these ideas. When if we just hold back a little bit, if we remove those starting cues of what we want them to accomplish and we let them follow their own path, um, these really wonderful things take place. Our kids become more creative. They become more self-sufficient. They become more engaged in the task at hand. Their task lasts longer. It's a one thing we say in our house is display, don't say. So if we want our kids to be engaged in something, then say we want them all to bake muffins together, or we have to get out the door at a certain time, whatever it is. Instead of sort of issuing all these reminders and all these commands that really we know our kids aren't listening to anyway, we use too many words, then we just start that process. We just get that we just start the process that we want to happen, just like TikTok, right? Atina's talk was said it feels like there's a party that's going on, and I'm always invited, and I just have to hop right in. And if we can kind of get that momentum happening as parents instead of that start stop that we do without any transitions, it kind of goes a really long way. And I would say, I mean, so it's a little bit like instead of saying, "Hey, do you guys want to sit by the fire and read a book with me?" Start the fire, open the book, sit down, and just go. And your kids will inevitably join you. It's the same reason that if you're baking cookies, somebody smells it, they automatically come in the kitchen. If you're blowing up balloons, somebody will come in and say, "What's the occasion? What's happening?" It's all of those things that we can just start. If we want something to happen, well, let's do it. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to put it on the calendar. Let's do it. Let's just do it right now.
I'm wondering about older kids. So you and I mean, you have a tween, so she's almost a teenager, but I'm wondering about like 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, high schoolers. I'm wondering how to replace that sense of connection they feel online because they're going on there because that's like their little community they're existing in. We need to rewire their brains to see that the community is outside of the phone. It's kind of a farce. So I guess my question for you is what does it look like for older kids and allowing that community to be pulled from the phone and into our homes?
It's messy, I always say, like, I'm better at answering my front door than my phone. So I just tell people, come over. You could come anytime. There is no in and out. Somebody's always home. Just come in and just be a person and not an avatar. Like you can just be here and it's not documented. There's no end goal, there's no outcome. It's just, you're safe here, come over. And so oftentimes, I always keep some cookie dough in the freezer for people
Mhm.
that stop by at the last minute. We have teens in and out of our house fairly on a regular basis. We're just constantly trying to create a community where truthfully the teens that you know need a safe haven. And there is sort of a transition that happens where they feel fidgety. They don't really know what to do without their phone. They don't really know how to engage in conversation. It takes some modeling. Um, but I found, we sit down at the dining room table, we have chips and salsa. I get out Monopoly Deal, we play games. And then by the time that they're done, they realize, "Oh, we haven't checked in with, like, whatever's happening on Snapchat at all
Mhm.
tonight." My husband's not shy about just taking everybody's phones and putting them in the microwave or whatever, like, I mean, he will absolutely collect, and he's got the kind of personality, he's the fun one, so he can do that. I never say, like, "Phones down," but it is suggested, if we have people take their shoes off when they come in, I say, "Throw your phone in the shoe if you want to," like,
Mhm.
there are I think we tend to overcomplicate it in our minds because we don't want to take away their form of community, but we have to recognize they do actually want that. As many times as we assume they're going to push back, they want to connect with people. And their version of connection that we have offered them isn't actually true connection. I know it seems like it's true connection, but it's not. And one of the stats that is alarming to me is that 71% of parents think that smartphone interaction does more harm than good when it comes to their kids. And it's true. We've seen it true. And children are trying to tell us, and we haven't been able to listen in a way that has really created lasting and effective change. And so our hope is that if we can start on a small scale, if we can give our kids and teens certainly other opportunities to engage, I think they will know the difference. They don't know it right now, but they will. They will.
Yes, absolutely. I'm wondering what it looks like again from your personal experience with your friends, some of your close friends. Are a lot of your close friends living similarly? Do they think that this is unrealistic? Tell me a little bit more about your personal experience.
It's funny. I thought there would be a lot of pushback. We get a lot of questions about it, but the questions are no longer why, they're always how. It's not, oh, well, why don't you do that? And we do even really small, silly things, like if our kids, when they're really, really young, we sort of made it a game where if they were at theater group or whatever, I'm talking ages 3 to 8 or something. We would say, "Hey, if somebody wants you to look at something on their phone, let's come up with some creative ways of why you don't wanna do that," or just saying no to that, or for whatever reason, just kind of getting them the habit of having those conversations of like, "Hey, no, we don't really wanna see your screen. We would rather hear the story from you," or, "We don't really wanna see the picture. We would rather, like, you describe it to us," or any of those things. And we were very open and we just said, "Hey, anytime you say no to looking at a picture on somebody's device, we'll take you out for ice cream." Like, that sounds like, let's just get in the habit now of engaging without that third thing that is always there, that we always are drawn to, that we have relied on to show us things, to describe things, to look up things, to give us more information. So, I mean, it sounds really extreme, but honestly, it worked really well in our favor because now people will come over and they'll always ask me, "Hey, can I show your daughter this thing?" And I'm like, I mean, if she would like to, she's 12 now. So I'm like, if she would like to, that's up to her. And she knows now she can say, "Actually, will you just tell me about it?" Or "Let's talk about it instead." We've always kind of looked for ways, big and small, to invite the person to share their experience rather than the robot to share the experience, right? Siri has the most monotone, boring voice I know. So why do we want information from her when we could get it from people in our real life that are right here in front of us?
Mhm.
So anyway, I think other parents in our circle have seen that and they've noticed the fruit of that and that our kids don't immediately want to look up things that they don't know. They would rather be curious about it for a while. They would rather think about it for a while. They would rather come up with their own solutions and they're very self-starting, they're very engaged. They like talking to people of all ages. They look you in the eye. There are things that they do that truly we're not impeccable parents. It's just the thing that we didn't do that
Mhm.
sort of reverses all of that. This was the one thing we didn't do. This is the thing that I think makes them a little bit different. So parents do take notice of that. I know other tech-free families, and it's kind of a very similar experience. And people wanna know, "How did you guys do that? Can we reverse engineer it?" And that's really part of what this book is.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh, as you're talking about, hey, you could just use your words to describe something as opposed to showing it on the phone. I found myself doing that last night. I was talking to my husband. We had date night and I was debriefing about our day at nature group. And I was like, oh, let me just show you, which is fine. Like, it's cool that we have tech in our pant pocket so that we can show these things. But there is a lost art of storytelling that I think is especially very telling in the younger generations, that it's like we need to build this skill again. And it is a muscle. And so I don't know, you've convicted me of just saying, maybe I don't always pull out my phone and show the example. I can describe it with my words. Curious though, I don't think that opting out, again, I love what you guys are doing, and you have challenged me to say I want to start implementing some of these, maybe just having goals for our family in a different way than I had before I got on the call with you. But I'll just say it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. I don't want to overwhelm moms listening to say, like, well, my teenager is literally addicted. But what is one practical step that they could use to encourage their children tonight, tomorrow?
Oh, I love that. And I love that you mentioned that because it is a spectrum. I think parents can do a couple things. One is parental controls is not just for the kid, it's for, I have it on my phone. So, what I did, and there's a video on our site on how to do this, but I just I put all the parental controls on my own phone. And so I don't have internet access. I don't know how a camera. It's literally just, it's the bare minimum phone. But it's the phone I had, so I didn't have to buy anything new. I think that all the Wise phones and things are very expensive. So put parental controls on your own phone just as an experiment. Get curious and see what happens. Make your phone background black. I think something shifts when we stop calling it our phone and we start calling it a phone, and depersonalizing that by taking off the family photo on the screen, right? That goes a really, really long way. It becomes a tool and not this toy that we carry around. The other thing, this is a hard one, I know, but if you do have a teen and you guys are tracking each other on Live 360, every single teen I talked to talked about how that created a barrier in their relationship because they felt like their parents weren't trusting them. And truthfully, their parents weren't trusting them because there's a difference. I think we think in our head that Life 360 sort of builds trust. But the only way to trust our kid is to trust them, not to track them. That's just tracking them. So if we can kind of take that off the table, I do think it sort of, what it says to our kids is, you don't actually need this phone for every area of your life. You can go somewhere without it. I think that's the message we're communicating, is that when we make our phones into little trackers, we're saying, have this on you at all times. You need this, you need this. And we don't need this. We have survived for hundreds of years without this. And so let's take that out of the equation so that we don't create this thought in their head that they can't survive without a phone. It's just not true.
Wow, that's so good. I definitely have thoughts about that, the tracking. I mean, just studies that say that our kids are safer today than they ever have been. But also, I think if you feel like you need to manage your kids' every move, then maybe there needs to be some conversations there of what created that distrust in the first place. Otherwise, offer them that trust and allow them to keep it until it's been broken. And I think also people that choose to do that have to be comfortable with their kids making mistakes. I absolutely made some mistakes and things I was doing in high school. And the thing was, I wasn't being tracked my every move, but I had to learn and overcome and grow from some of those poor choices. And it's like, if we're never allowing our kids to make a mistake, again, some mistakes are irreversible and we can't come back from them. I am not saying that, but I just think that we have to be comfortable when our kids make mistakes, not if, when they make mistakes, to be like, okay, we just have to reevaluate, stay in constant communication. I don't need to still track your every move. I think that has gotten kind of weird and more hands on. That is, it kind of is like, so we're talking about like this connection. It's like, also, we're never supposed to be in 24/7 connection with anyone. We deserve privacy.
Absolutely. And I think you're exactly right. It's not if they make a mistake, it's when they make a mistake. And truly the only way to do it is to practice ourselves. It is impossible to send this thing out that has your whole heart and they're interacting with the world without you. And it is the scariest thing ever. And I would never, ever, ever pretend that it's easy, but we
Mhm.
have to we have to practice ourselves how to let them go. And if we can't do that, if we're tracking them, or heaven forbid, we're tracking them and then they're not where they said that they were, and then now we have a real barrier of trust. And sometimes it is better for that information to come directly from your child rather than this third party app that, number one, the data alone, it's not safe. It's not safe what they're gathering. But number
Yeah.
two, it there were so many teens that I spoke with that just said, I feel like when my parents ask me questions, it's like a pop quiz. Like they already know the answer. Why are they asking me? Because they
Mhm.
track me all day. So once you turn that feature off, well, then when you're asking your kid a question, you actually want to know the answer. You're actually connecting with them. You're actually having a conversation with them rather than this like test mentality where it's like, are you
Mhm.
telling me the truth? How about now? How about now? It does
Yeah.
open up that line of communication so much better. It's so much easier. It's clearer, more direct, and it kind of gives your kid the opportunity to come to you when they need you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad we touched on that. Well, there are so many more things that I wanted to touch on, but what's a final word of encouragement you want to leave with listeners before we wrap things up?
I would just say this is a time we do actually have a lot of control over. Technology is something, it is not out of our hands. It is something that we really, really can fight. And I think we must fight it. I think this is a really important time for our future generations. We are entering this pivot point where we can either opt in or opt out. And you don't have to opt all the way out. There are so many small things you can do. We've talked about just a couple, but I would just encourage parents that if you are on the other side of it and you're finding that you're not happy with your kids' phone usage, or you're not using the phone the way that you would want your kid to use the phone,
Mhm.
there are so many small ways to course correct that are less overwhelming than others that will kind of lead to a momentum.
Mhm.
They're all in the book, and even if you wanna start very, very, very small,
Mhm.
just, one parent that I spoke with took a cue from Meta, and you know how Meta has the whole, like, report button, so you can report some content that you see online that, is disturbing or that you don't want to see or for whatever reason, but it's anonymous, and so, we had a conversation, and I encouraged her to just put a little suggestion box on her kitchen counter, totally anonymous, where kids can just pop in and write something that they saw or that they have a question about or something that they experienced online. And then their family can talk about it together and figure out a course of action, not in a way to say, okay, no phones, let's take the phone away, but in a way that, okay, if this is your reality, let's navigate it together and let's have a conversation about it. As
Mhm.
long as we're on the same page and we know what we're seeing, and if we're not able to process it collectively, if we're not able to experience it collectively, then we really have no idea what our kids are actually seeing and living. And so if we can't sort of be there with them because we all have individual screens, let's at least download with them. Let's at least process it together. So I would say starting there is a really, really great, great strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Erin, I know you're not on social media anymore, but where can listeners find and connect with you and the things that you're doing online?
We're at optoutfamily.com, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I still have a blog, I still have a website and things like that, but you're right. It would be hypocritical to say go on Instagram and follow us there. So yeah, we're just at optoutfamily.com.
Perfect. Okay. Well, as we wrap the conversation up, I'm going to ask you two just rapid fire questions that I ask every guest. And the first one is, what's been a beneficial resource in your life that you want to share with the listeners?
So I love the work of Michaeline Duclaff. Did you read Hunt Gather Parent?
Oh, yes. Yes. I forgot the author's name.
I love her. She endorsed this book. She's a wonderful person. She is so wise, and I learned so much from her. And I know she has a book coming out as well very soon. But I would say she is a resource in terms of the science behind a lot of this. But Hunt Gather Parent, that book is fantastic. I highly recommend. I give it to baby showers all the time.
I'll be sure to include that book in the show notes because that is an excellent one. A lot of my friends are reading that right now too. So, my last question for you, and then I'll let you go, is what is something that you can't stop talking about? And I feel like I want to limit you and say it can't be about tech and opting out.
No, I love that. Yes, I know because it can't take up all of your life.
Yeah.
Um, Something I can't stop talking about. Well, I am constantly asking people for camping advice because we are going to be living out of a camper on a mountain all summer long. And this
Oh,
is the longest that we don't even have any running water yet. So it's going to be a
oh, no.
real off grid experience. So if anybody has any tips, please email me. I would love to hear. I can't stop talking about it. I have so many questions and we have so much to learn.
Oh, that's so fun. See, I wish you could document that, but I get that you're gonna have this be like a personal, private family experience, which is really beautiful, honestly.
Thank you.
Well, Erin, thanks for joining me today, and I can't wait for listeners to read this book because it's a good one.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks for having me.